Hello everybody, just check the volume. Hello to you all, and good morning on Sunday on a snowy Glastonbury. And I'm just going to wait as always for people to join the caravan here. Okay, so I'm just going to sit for a moment quietly whilst people arrive, and I appreciate this is an early update. Normally I tend to do them later, but this is really shouting to do now, hence this time of 12:05 UK time. Okay, so I'm just going to take a moment to wait for people to join. Okay. Sorry, I'll speak up. Very unexpected live, and yet this has been coming for a couple of weeks to do. I've been sitting on it for a couple of weeks. Mainly because I'm quite a shy person. I'm a very private person, and I don't share all the visions that I've received, which are visions that play out in front of my eyes. So, just like I see this tissue, the whole reality changes. And sometimes those visions aren't shared because it's not right timeline to share them. In other words, there's a block within the throat. It's like a seal, an energetic seal that I've known about for years. And you're given information, you're given data, and some of that data is to be given in the moment, and some of it has to be sealed, to be waited until you give the information, until it's right timing. And that's one of these occasions. I have, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to somebody about this vision I had in 2017, and they said you should share this on your Facebook. A couple of people have said that, but I've still sat on it because I won't do unless it's called within to do. I won't do just because people ask. It has to come from within. The energy has to come from within. And then also with it being a little bit personal, it makes me quite nervous as a human being because I am shy. So, that said, let's get on with it. This is a bit like story time today. So I hope you're sitting comfortably. I want to start in a different way because this is what's guided. I want to read you a post I read this morning by a beautiful brother and friend called Nicky Hammid, who lives in New Zealand. And I'm just going to read 2/3 of the post that is on his wall. That's Nicky Hammid, okay, Hamid. I'm just going to read you the first part because this completely relates to what I'm going to share. So, let's begin. Okay, and forgive my reading, by the way, because I'm not a very good reader. Okay. And the so-called fall of humanity happened very simply through vanity. a group of humans listening to their shadow minions thought they could do it all without God, without divinity, without their very own essence. And we were each convinced against our higher knowing, and have taken the whole idea stroke reality that we could do it through the mind and through controlling life. And we forgot the heart. We forgot that creating is an endless unfolding of our dreams. That it is miraculous and magical, and is initiated in the child innocence that was our birthright. The Atlantean peoples had it all and learned to create anything in form. They knew health, wealth, and happiness, but they eventually thought that they could do it without their Godhead. That in their spiritual arrogance, they could put all their trust in the tools, especially crystals, the grand separation, and it destroyed them all. Now we are undoing it, retracing the fall in reverse through love, in moving back to the heart of one first. We are discovering that health, wealth, and happiness and creative genius must follow. It just is. Don't try to grab anything. If you are creating, it will arrive in the divine timing and the manifestation that you are a part of. If you need to cultivate one thing for this all to happen, then let it be. Loving, joyful patience in total faith that the divine God source within you is doing all the heavy lifting. Shine on. So there is some text after that. So again, just to remind people just joining, that post I read today is by Nicky, N-I-C-K-Y, Hamid, H-A-M-I-D. He lives in New Zealand, beautiful friend and brother. And it was reading that post that kind of put all the energies moving inside me, that then pushed me to draw it out, the vision that I had in 2017, because it's completely related to what Nicky says. And this is the beauty of divine truth. It's universal. So what you find is that those higher truths are being said by people who have embodied that divine truth. And so we all know different pieces of the jigsaw. We all have different pieces. Nobody knows everything. But there are divine truths that many people know. And they just wait for right timing to share them. So I want to now tell you the vision, because this vision that played out before my eyes in 2017 here in the caravan in Glastonbury is this timeline, and we've been within it for at least 2 weeks now. At least. I've been knowing this for at least 2 weeks, but I've held back speaking it out loud because I couldn't. I just couldn't, and it wasn't the right timing, basically, to do so. But it is now, and it's a little bit, if I'm honest, it's a bit, I'm a bit nervous sharing it because I do talk about what I was shown, but it's not about me. It's not about me at all. It's about the timeline, and I want to emphasize that and be very clear about it. It's about the timeline every single person on the planet is in. And sometimes the outside can be so loud and so fast that it isn't possible for some people to see the subtleties that rest behind that loudness. In actual truth, there comes a point in everybody's path where the subtleties of energy and the subtleties of sight and knowing and consciousness, we grow and grow into it, and so subtle becomes our loud, and the outside noise isn't a part of our world. I hope that makes some sense. Okay, so I will show you the drawing. I'll do a snapshot as always afterwards, and I'll post the picture in the comments. I'm just going to show it to you for you to absorb just for a moment. And then I'll describe the scene. So basically, forgive the drawing, it's the arrival at the ocean. And in the center is the collapse. It's the collapse. So bear in mind, this is all symbolic. It's metaphor. But this is exactly the vision that I was shown. And I walked it as consciousness, basically. I was in it. I was actually in this scene in 2017. My consciousness was. And so it just played out, and I walked it through my consciousness. So in the middle, you can see the collapse, the choice point, but it's the collapse. So I was shown buildings falling like paper. So in other words, it's not literally buildings falling, it's the timeline or the illusion or the 3D reality falling, collapsing before our eyes. And there's a choice point, and you can see the black arrows. There's where the choice point is, at the collapse. Okay, so I'm just gonna point out that there's one route which takes you to some golden shiny pyramids, and again, this is just analogy, it's what I was shown, it doesn't mean there are shiny pyramids. And then the other route, which was to my right, so I'm not sure how this is seen for you, but to my right there was another route along the beach. So the choice point, the collapse, people choose to go left or they choose to go right. There's two choices. Just gonna hold it back here because it's uncomfortable to keep holding it like that. So now I'm going to walk you through the vision itself that I experienced. I arrived at the beach and I saw the buildings falling and collapsing like paper. I could see how unreal they were. And I looked to my left, and in the distance were mountains and these solid gold pyramids. Real gold, really shiny, bright, clean, sparkling. And I felt that root, and I felt the pyramids. And by the way, this is an analogy. I'm not talking about pyramids here at all. And I'm not really talking about Egypt, although I might mention it later. Okay. I felt into that root as I was stood at the collapse. And it didn't feel right for me. I could feel it. There was something wrong with it, and I couldn't work out what it was. But I knew there was a falsity to it. And then I looked to my right, and all I saw was a beach, and there was nothing on the beach. There were no signs, nothing. There was nothing for me to point to, just like on here, you've got the pyramids. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. No objects, no definitions. It was the path of the unknown. So I took that in. And then I looked back again to my left at the root of the pyramids. And I just knew it was a no. I knew there was a falsity to it. And I didn't understand it at the time. I do now, but I didn't at the time of the vision. So having looked back at the pyramids and that root, this beautiful shiny gold, sparkling scene that looked beautiful, but it didn't feel it. I looked at that a second time and I had no option. I had to take the walk and the path of the unknown along the beach, where there were no signs, no symbols, no promises. There was nothing. And so I walked. I walked along that beach here. And I just walked and walked quietly, peacefully along the shoreline. It was so peaceful, but I didn't know where I was going. And after a long time, it seemed a long time, I could hear something behind me. So I was completely on my own, but I could hear something behind me, and I turned around and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people behind me, probably at least 100 feet behind me. And so I stopped. I was shocked. I stopped and saw them and then carried on walking on my own. And then I stopped again. I turned around, and as I stopped, they stopped. And this happened a couple of times. I walked on. As I stopped, I turned around, and they stopped again. So I then went up to them. And I said, "Why are you following me?" And a man came forward. And he just said, "Because we trust you." And I looked at him and I looked at the people and I said, "But I don't know where I'm going. I've no idea where I'm going." And he said, "Yes, I know. We know that." And I was still uncomfortable. So I said, "But I literally don't know where I'm going. I don't know where this beach, this route leads to. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where it ends up." And he said to me again, he said, "Yes, yeah, we all know that. We know you don't know. But we still trust you." And so I stood there on the beach, looking at him, looking at all these people. And I just had to accept that was their choice. That they'd chosen to go that way too. But I was more comfortable that they knew I didn't know where I was going. They had to. I had to be certain that they understood that. There were no signs. There was the not knowing. So I carried on walking in peace, that they knew exactly where they stood with me. And it was their choice. So I carried on walking and walking and walking. And what you can't quite see on this drawing is that there was a point right on the edge of the page there. There's a point where the beach turns. And you don't know what's next, what's over here, okay? Because the beach and the coastline curves and you can't see what's round the corner here. And so I carried on walking and reached that point of the beach. And when I turned the corner, I looked up in the sky and there was, I'm not quite sure what it was. I can only say it looked like a city of light. It was made of a substance that we don't have in this world. It was made of light structure, but there seemed to be some sort of solidity to it, but not like our solidity here in this world. So similar to the tower that I spoke about that is going to arrive on the tour, the light tower. If it was a city, it could have been a ship, I don't know. I seriously don't know to this day. But it was big, it was a big structure. And all the colours of the walls of this structure were rainbow colours. So one part was pale pink, one part was pale green, pale blue. But it was all made of this light structure. And so when I saw that in the sky and I looked at it, bearing in mind this is playing out in my caravan 3 years ago, my consciousness immediately jumped into the light structure. And as soon as I was in it, my consciousness looking down at the beach. So I was in the sky, in the light city, say here, and I was looking down at the beach, just as consciousness. And what I saw on the beach was myself, my human body, walking along the beach. And at this point, thousands upon thousands of people walking along the same beach, all walking towards the light structure. So that was my first view as consciousness inside this light structure, looking down at the earthly scene. And then I turned round and there was a room, and there must have been at least 12 different beings in the room, and the room was all made of light. And every being was a different species, not of this world. And some of those species and how they looked familiar, some of them didn't. But they were all smiling and watching the people, humanity, coming towards them. They knew they had made it. They knew beforehand they had made it, but they had come to watch the show. But the thing that really struck me the most, personally speaking, was as I looked at all these different species of beings that chose to watch Earth and humanity, there was this one being, and most of these beings I couldn't say if they were male or female. To me, they were neither. They just were. They were just beings. But there was this one being that was actually had the skin color of like a mustard yellow. And she looked slightly feminine. But the reason it struck me and my consciousness turned to her was because she was crying. And they were tears of joy. And I just had to look at her because I was shocked, because I didn't realize that other species of beings cried. I didn't know that in this experience. And so I was quite shocked. And I just witnessed her crying and crying and crying with joy at what humanity was doing. So that's the vision shared finally. It's not about me, that vision. It's about this timeline. And so I will talk about this timeline and how it relates to it, but I now want to bring in some more information. I got a couple of, in fact, I got it on the 8th of January, which related to the vision of 3 years ago. So on the 8th of January, this is really quick info, I woke up to a song in my head. I played the song and I did energy work similar to what I do on the tour or did last year. I did energy work to the music and let go of my humanness and just was energy in movement. Within that playing of the song, the words within me, which came from me, they're not channeled, were the words Exodus 3, followed by King James the something Bible. So I don't have a King James, whatever version it was, Bible. So I looked online. And I didn't know it, but there is a part of the Bible called Exodus 3. So I read it. And if you read that verse, Exodus 3, bear in mind everything is story to point us. So there's always layers upon layers of information behind actual text. There's meaning behind stories. And there's higher and higher and higher and higher meanings behind the same story. So that's how I viewed it, was I was being told a story to help awakening. And Exodus 3 points to Egypt. It points to Moses asking the ruler at the time permission to leave the land. And by the way, I'm not saying anything about Egypt here. It's just a story, okay? I love Egypt. Can't wait to go one day, maybe. But this is nothing to do with Egypt, okay? See beyond a country. Just see the ascension, the awakening, the golden era. So in Exodus 3, Moses asks the ruler at the time for permission to take his people out of Egypt. And the ruler offers him position, wealth, not to go. The ruler offers him status within Egypt to not go and just to stay. But think of Moses as yourself, in other words, okay? It's a story. Moses heard those offerings from the ruler and still chose to go. If you read the verse, which I did online, as soon as I got to the part where it points to the land of milk and honey, I was catapulted back to this vision of 3 years ago. And I knew that this was the route that was being spoken about in the Bible. The route that promises riches, that promises wealth, that promises health, that promises this, that, and the other, is the equivalent to, in the Bible, the ruler offering this, that, and the other, and promises. And it's the equivalent to what Nikki Hammett is writing about Atlantis and the choices that people had in Atlantis. I never actually was in Atlantis. I was in Lemuria, but I have visited Atlantis to see what happened. So I know categorically what Nikki is saying this morning. All marries up. It marries up to the Bible, it marries up to the vision I had 3 years ago, and it marries up to Atlantis and what is common knowledge within the Awakened of why it fell. So I want to talk now about this timeline and how it is. So all of that is now. It's all now. And this choice point is now. It has been for several weeks here. And there's two things that are in common, that are widespread within this point, this choice point. One is that it applies to everybody. It doesn't matter if a person is awake or asleep. They get to choose whether to take this route or this route. They get to choose. This is more in depth, and I'll go on to it in a moment, but they literally get to choose. And I'll explain why. You can see it applies to everybody. So that's one of the commonalities that applies to the whole of humanity individually. And I've actually forgotten the other ones, so I might go back to that in a moment. Okay. This route here, I want to go into the subtle detail of choosing this route. Okay? The subtle detail, which is very evident if you see, if you feel, if you hear, just as the observer, not to judge it, but just to observe it and just be neutral with what you see. You don't need to go into what you see, you just need to observe it, and it is what it is. But that route I've written at the top, it is service to self. It is the human will, not God's will embodied. And that is the difference between the two choice points, is that the people that are choosing, and bearing in mind I saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people making that choice in the vision 3 years ago. There were hordes of people going towards the gold. Those people can be awakened or unawakened. But there's a huge difference if you see. Those people will be that their primary inner thoughts and feelings and emotions and choices and actions, okay, are to do with themselves as the personality, as the identity. So they're actually serving their own human will or their own human willpower. To try and make this a little bit clearer, because it's very confusing within the spiritual arena, a person can be seen to be in service to all and providing services to the awakened. But if that person is doing it primarily for themselves, for their personality, then that is human will, and that's what they're choosing. And there's no right or wrong with that. I want to really emphasize that. It's just that that's where they are on their journey. So they're choosing for themselves primarily to help others. Now, if I explain this route, you're going to see the difference. The people that bearing in mind, I know the second point I wanted to make, do you remember I said there's two commonalities here at this choice point? The second point I want to make is whether a person goes this way or whether a person goes this way. There's also a second point that they all have in common, every single one of us, everyone. It's all unknown. So many of you, I've witnessed, are in this state of unknowing and uncertainty. Everybody is. Every single human being on this planet is in a state and has been of not knowing, of uncertainty. And those uncertainties and those not knowings can then lead to fear. Which is why a lot of people will go this way. Because there's promises here that they are believing in. So in a state of not knowing and uncertainty, they're looking and they're grasping for anything that gives them hope and gives them, this could be so. And they're choosing to believe that because they themselves are in unknowing, they're in uncertainty. So they're looking for something to be certain about. And that's where the promises and storylines that are out there play their part, and people choose to believe them, okay, of what's going to happen, what will happen. But in truth, everyone, 8 billion people, are in a state of not knowing right now, including myself. The people that choose this route are choosing it because they're trusting God, they're trusting Source. So if you trust God, if you turn to God, if you trust Source, you can be in peace, complete and utter peace of not knowing. You can recognize that this is a time of uncertainty and not knowing. And you can just accept that I don't know. I don't know. And I can totally accept my not knowing and still choose God, still choose Source, and put my absolute trust in the hands of God and Source, which is actually what I've done since I awoke. It doesn't mean I know anything. It doesn't mean I know everything. I don't. But I've trusted all along. And what that means is there are no signs this route. Because this route, every step we tread, we embody more and more and more of the remembrance that is and always was the true connection we always had with Source. It's the path of trust. It's the path of faith. But the difference is that these people walking this way are serving God's will, as opposed to the people walking this way who choose to serve human will, personality will. I want this, I want that. I hope if I go down this route, I will get this. This route has no attachment to anything that is promised over here. There's just no attachment to anything anymore. But there's still the walking. There is still every single step. And these steps have been in place since the 8th of January. And every single step, every single day, we unfold a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And so we feel at complete peace with the not knowing. There are no questions. There are no questions. There's just being in that state of peace, being in that state of presence, and walking along that beach one step at a time. Just as you. Just with you. But here's the beauty. This is the beauty. It's not just you. It's you with God. It's you with Source. And every step that you commit to as you walk in the unknown. Every single step you embody more and more and more and more connection, conscious connection to Source, Creator, God, whatever you want to call. I know everybody has a different name for it. And so what happens, you end up, and it's already happening, you end up treading each footstep with God known within you. And this can be seen in the spiritual arena. Those that are choosing that route can be seen. I can see them. So there is actually quite a division. It's not really a division. It's just a choice. And there's no right or wrong choice as to what to choose. Because if we just completely pan out from all that detail that I've just described, which is an experience for each one, let's take a higher perspective, because there's always lots and lots and lots of different perspectives. And I try to explain in ways that hopefully allows everybody watching this to understand based on where they are. But my perspective is always here. It's always the bigger picture. It's always outside of this. The bigger perspective is that every choice that any one of us make, whichever way we choose to go, is God experiencing itself. So the people that are choosing this route of the promises, as well as the service to self, because they want what they want for themselves, and then they'll put others after that. That's the difference. So they have this primary inner desire for themselves, and they place that before everything. Everything. Whereas here, these people, they're not actually choosing for themselves. They're just waiting for the signs of what to do and when to do it. And they're just watching the signs, and they're literally doing it. They're taking those acts based on the signs that are being shown to them, that are signs outside of 3D and 4D. They're the divine signs on the path that is in service to God. And because they've chosen it, that's what they get given. And so they just walk with God. They serve God. And when you've got thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people choosing to serve God first because they actually are a part of God and they know that, then you have heaven on earth. Then you have the land of milk and honey. Then you have the promised land. But this route is more aligned to the choices made in Atlantis, where people felt they could do better than God. They could do more than God. That their mind was so in control and it knew what it wanted, which is actually, in truth, the ego still running within them. So, it's all God, all of it. Every single person, whatever choice they make, there's no right and there's no wrong. There's no good and there's no bad. There may seem to be at a human level, but that's when the human is experiencing polarity through their state of consciousness. But if we go right above that to the whole bigger picture, there's no right or wrong, because every single thing that exists in the whole of this creation comes from Source itself, has that God spark within it to varying degrees of consciousness. So a rock has a different degree of consciousness to an animal, to a human being, to an awakened one, to a highly awakened one, and so it goes on and on and on. But everything came from God and is made of Source. And so all the while people are having their human experiences in that degree of forgetfulness that they are connected to God, all the while they feel separate to God, disconnected to God. God is experiencing itself in them and seeing what it's like to feel so disconnected, seeing what it's like to choose this, seeing what it's like to choose that. And so you have Source in wonder, in joyful wonder of everything it has actually created. And that's why there's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. It's just consciousness at various degrees experiencing itself. So that's where we are, and it's where we have been for the last 2 weeks. And it's ongoing, because just as people have chosen this route, okay? Imagine somebody choosing this route to the promises, to the I want this, whether it's health, money, happiness, stability, but it's about self first, human will first. At any point of that walk, there is always infinite possibility. So at any point of that walk, they can turn back and come back round to this point and take this path. And the people that are walking this path in the great unknown, bear in mind, everybody doesn't know, it's just these people are choosing to believe this over here. So anybody walking this path at any point can go, nope, this is not for me. I'd actually like a bit of this over here, please. And they can change their mind, because there's always, always infinite possibility. And I guess, do you know what? I'll leave with just this one thing: to keep an open mind, to not close yourself off to new beliefs, to not put people in boxes that you create for them in your mind, to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel knowledgeable, to keep a complete, utter open mind. at the days, the weeks, the months ahead of you. Because as soon as you place something in a box and say, I believe this, or that person is that, as soon as we place anything, including ourselves, in a box, we limit ourselves. We're limiting our experience because we're choosing a belief system again. It's a new belief system. We're choosing a new belief system again, and guess what? That belief system will become your reality. And so, in a way, it slows down the expansion of you. It slows down the consciousness that you are, that you've come here to be in full, in your fullness. But as soon as we label something, or we label someone, or we label ourselves, we're literally narrowing down all of this potential experience, which is completely limitless. So to keep an open mind, to have your thoughts, to have your ideas, but stay open. That's the greatest advice I could really give at this time. Well, perhaps the second greatest advice at this time is to keep the mind open. Don't limit your experience by your new beliefs, because next week there'll be more new beliefs that you can take on board, and some people will. New beliefs. So the greatest advice is to keep your mind open to everything. And that will, just by default, allow you your greatest expansion of yourself back into what you already are. And the second piece of advice, I guess, is to always come back here. No matter what happens to you, no matter what you experience in your reality and your life, it will come. You may react, you may not react. That's okay. But just at your ready point to come back here and not hold on to the pain, not hold on to any of those difficult emotions. Come back to the heart. Because, as I've said so many times in the last years of doing this and trying to support people, there is only one route, and that is through the heart. The brain marries the heart. The route is not through the brain and the mind, like in the Atlantean times, like what Nikki Hammond is pointing to. This is the universal truth. The way is through this heart. It's a portal to the infinite. And that magic ingredient that you turn to keep expanding yourself again and again is the love within you. It's your love within you. In truth, it's not your love. In truth, it isn't. It's God's love known through you. It's an energy. We call it love, but it's actually an energy frequency. That's what it truly is. We call it love. It's a feeling inside you, and we label that as love, but actually it's energy that you feel. And it's that energy frequency that takes you further and further and further and further into knowing what you truly are. Into the reconnection to Source, so that you're no longer disconnected. You no longer need to seek, because you found yourself and you were there all along. Okay. I've no idea if any of that has helped, but I've shared that vision. It's time to, it's not about me, that vision. It's about the timeline, the collective timeline, and everybody's choice. And if you do want to read that passage in the Bible, it's Exodus 3. Imagine you and you and you and you and you being the Moses character. There's the choice point that we've been in for a couple of weeks now. But just to remember also that whatever a person chooses, they have that absolute free will to change their mind in any moment. Stay open. And stay open to everybody else around you. Don't box them up. Because that actually limits your own expansion. Okay. God bless. I do hope to do the next live and give just a short exercise that we can do together to help people sleep, because I know people are asking for it, and it's just an exercise, an easy practice that you can get into. It's so easy, just to help people get to sleep at night. So that'll be fun, and hopefully we won't fall asleep while we're watching ourselves. All right, so hopefully that's the next one, but who knows, you know, I just do as guided in the moment. But that's the hope, is that that will be the next live, and if not, it will be at some point after the next. Okay, God bless you all. Do take care of yourselves. Keep coming back here. And my gratitude to Nikki Hamid for writing the post this morning, which kind of was that spark within me that pointed to doing the drawing and pointed to doing and sharing the information, because it's so poignant. So gratitude to our friend Nikki too. Okay, I love you all, always. Look after you. God bless. Bye-bye.